Okay, man.
My
I
God.
gotta go in. I gotta go in Maurice mode.
Who's Maurice?
There's Michael McCloud. There's Melvin Vandersloot. There's Maurice Cutterthroat. There's Miguelito Lovelace and Michael Abdurrahim. Are we on?
Wow.
I figured as much. I'm Michael McCloud, street street kid from Boston, Massachusetts. I work as a paralegal in a law firm. It's the only job I've ever held in my life. You know? Well, paralegal, it's boring as hell, actually, because I've been doing it for 40-something years. So it's like I can do it in my sleep. And things that come easy, sometimes they no longer are a challenge. And when things are no longer a challenge, I get bored and excuse me, I gotta go and do some things. But yeah, when there's no challenge, I have a tendency to get bored and act out. So it's something I do to maintain me, but it's not what I love to do.
Where did you grow up?
You were supposed to say, well, what did you love to do? What I love to do is art. I love to be creative. I love to make things. I love to go to museums and things like that. I love, as you see from my mustache, I love Salvador Dali. And all of Salvador Dali's paintings, which this is one, he has a melting clock. So what the melting clock means to me is that time is of the essence. We have to do everything we have to do for God before the clock strikes over. That's why I like Salvador Dali. In every one of his paintings, you'll find a clock somewhere. It could be small, could be big, but you're gonna find that clock somewhere in his paintings. And that's why I twist my mustache up in a handlebar mustache. I like a lot of things. That's why I came to Boston. I like a lot of things that don't have to deal with cold. Cold, I can't deal with it. But yeah, that's what I like to do. I like to be creative.
What was it like growing up in Boston?
That's a good question, right? It was terrible. Well, I can't say terrible. Early on was beautiful. As I got older and saw what the world was doing, it got ugly. Because at the time of my youth, well, in my elementary days, in Boston, it was black and white. What I mean by black and white,
You were born in 1959.
1959, so I was born in a time where racism ran rampant. It was white against black all the time, and it was crazy. It was just ludicrous how folks treated one another. I'll tell you something about Boston. You can go, I don't know if it's on National Geographics or what, but at one point, they started busing the black kids to the white schools and the white kids to the black schools. And as a result of this, there was turmoil between the communities, the black community and the white community. And it was pretty treacherous for a young kid, 8 years old, 9 years old, to get on a chartered bus to go to school, which is maybe 5, 6 miles, 7, 10 miles away. And on that 10-mile stretch of land to the school, on both sides of the sidewalk, what my sister and I witnessed. And just to give you a little understanding of the turbulent times that I grew up in. And what we saw were hundreds and hundreds of white mothers and fathers, white meaning Caucasian, mothers and fathers in the street protesting and telling us to go back where we came from. But you know, they weren't using words that were befitting of our stature. They were using words to try to demean. But let me tell you though, on both sides of the street, not only were they yelling racial epithets, but they were also throwing rocks into the bus. I had to go to school every day thinking that maybe this could be it. If they get what they're trying to accomplish, we're just kids and they're adults, man. So we were just kids. They were adults. And imagine a kid by 8 to 10 years old is very impressionable. So if that's the impression that you're giving off, I decided to give it back. You know, I just didn't like it. But the way we were taught to give it back was to excel in school. You know? To excel in school. But to see that type of hate out of people at that young age, hate breeds hate. You know, if the person doesn't know anything about love. And at that time in my life, I grew to hate Caucasian people. Why? I didn't think I was a racist. I still am not a racist. Look at my daughter. You know, it's hard to love somebody that doesn't love you. And back in the day, if you do your research on Boston history, you'll see a lot of the climate was racist. It was very much racist. But it was fun for as long as it lasted. But back in the day, in those days, you know, when I talk about racism and stuff like that, at that time, that it was nothing but. But you want to hear a funny story? This is how racist it was. You ready?
Go.
For the public. Well, we didn't have a lot of money, so we went to a welfare probably sponsored camp. It was in Camp Canton, Massachusetts. So we went to this camp. The camp wasn't even a camp like you would expect it to be, like with maybe teepees or huts or you know, tents, right? It was a building. It was a medical building, right? So they sent us to a medical building. Now what we found out after we was in this camp for a while, everybody that went to the camp had a medical problem. But there was a way my mother can get us into camp, you know, for no money, but we didn't know the deal. But I just want to tell you how racist it was. So we'd be in the camp on these, looked like a medical facility, but it had everything, bruh. It had canoes, it had a lake, it had an island with real tents on, it had archery, horses, it had everything. So it was really a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful situation. But, so we would stay there for the whole entire summer. We'd never even come home. We just stayed there the whole summer. So our parents, all the black kids' parents would send them money every week. The money was to go to the candy store and buy candy. So every Saturday when it was candy time, this is terrible, but it's funny, right? So when it's candy time, they say, okay, everybody, all the kids, okay, everybody, we're going to the store. Oh my God, we're going to the store. I got money, we go to the store. So he said, everybody hold hands and we're gonna walk to the store from here. The store was about a mile and a half away. As we walked, they said, okay, let's sing the song that we taught you. Let's see the song that we taught you. So the song went like this, and you tell me if this is racist or not. You got a line, 50, 60 black kids, and they're singing this song. Just plant a watermelon right over my head. Sounds terrible, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Huh? You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Just plant a watermelon right over my head and let the juice slip through. Just plant a watermelon right over my head. That's all I ask of you. Now Southern fried chicken may taste mighty fine, but nothing tastes better than a watermelon rind. No, Nathan, do you hear those words?
I do.
And here I am, 66 years old, and still can remember that shit. That's how bad it was. Now imagine, you heard the song, and imagine these black kids walking down all white streets singing that song. I still get angry just thinking about it. And people are riding by like, look at what they're singing. It's bad. It's just the things you had to go through. Because when you're going through these things, it's like you're from a religious family. When Jesus Christ was carrying the cross, what was the symbolization of the cross? I see the cross as the burden. We all carry it. You understand what I'm saying? So no matter what we go through in life, it's the cross that we carry. See, we have to bear that brunt of whatever it's going to be successful. Anything successful, I mean, it has to go through some trials and tribulations, right? They may not be as severe as other people's, but they're still yours. And that's the burden that we carry. So when we were going through all the civil rights suffering, it was just the burden that we carry. But you know, when the folks were trying to bury us, more or less, and I'm talking about black folk, when they were trying to bury us, they did actually bury us. They buried black people. But when they buried them, what they didn't realize when they put them in the dirt, they were seeds. They've reproduced, and they grew back stronger. You know, so it's just whatever you have to go through, like I went through in those days being in Boston. It was just like taking iron. In order for it to get hard, you have to bring it through the fire. So it was just the toughening of the soul. So when you get as old as I am, you can be as content as I am. It was dire. There was a lot going on. There was drug addiction. There was people coming from Vietnam. Martin Luther King was killed. John F. Kennedy was killed. Robert F. Kennedy was killed. They were killing all the people that were supposed to lead us into a land that was more promised than the one we're in now. But as a result thereof of all the racial injustice and the prejudice and everything, they killed the leaders that could have taken us someplace. So now everybody was stuck in the same rut. But as a result of this rut, you know, people turned to alcoholism, people turned to drug addiction, people turned to all types of things that were just known as vices back then. They talk about, in situations where I came up with, people become products of their environment. And their environment was something that, it wasn't like you saw next door neighbors were judges, lawyers, firemen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Your next door neighbors or the people up the street, they did things of ill repute, if you understand what I'm saying. Drug selling, robbing, stealing, hustling, murdering, stabbing, doing whatever you do in order to get a meal on your plate. This is what they did. So as a result, I kind of became a product of my environment. But the beauty about redemption, I'm not a product of my environment anymore, but an environmental product. It goes farther than the neighborhood. You know, I'm from Boston, but I'm videoing this from Miami. It goes further, you know what I mean? So it goes further than the neighborhood. Sometimes, in the words of Jay-Z, sometimes you have to jump ship and able to walk on water. Let me say that again. Sometimes you have to jump ship to walk on water. And what that meant to me, I had to jump the Bostonian ship because I had lost my way there.
Could you elaborate?
I lost my way because I became a drug seller and a drug addict and a bunch of other adjectives that we'll talk about as time goes on, right? But so I became a product of the environment. I did things that they did in my environment, but that most normal people would find it insane. But if you live in an insane society, when in Rome you do what they do. So I became everything I didn't want to be. That's why I like to say that I'm a chameleon of sorts. I shapeshift, you know, and the reason why I shapeshift, like I said, I come from a neighborhood that's different than most neighborhoods. And I was taught by different people of different ilks. Pimps, stick-up kids, killers, just people that they all lived in the neighborhood, so you talk to them, right? And a pimp, the famous in-house pimp in Boston, gave me this line. He said, "Perception seized is success achieved." You ever hear anything like that? You said the way other people see you is the way you are. To them. To them. But when you come from an environment like I'm from, what that tells me is I can be whatever you want me to be. I'm not that. Here comes the game. You understand what I'm saying? Here comes the game. Could be the love con or whatever. Now he's setting you up. He's setting you up. So, but yeah, so I became all of that, man. And I'm not happy to say it. I mean, but I'm not sad either because it was my burden that I spoke about earlier. It's my burden to carry, and I carried it well. I think I did.
To have become a chameleon?
Huh?
To have become a chameleon?
No, to have not died trying to become who I am now. Because in my neighborhood also, they died a lot.
Why do you think it was such a burden to have lived?
Because all my buddies are dead. Everyone's gone. So when everyone's gone, people have a tendency to get something known as survivor's guilt. Because guess what? And I told you I sold drugs in the whole nine. When I was the one who initiated doing what I was doing. My buddies, they wouldn't say, "Hey, let's go get some drugs and sell." I said it. And for them not to be here now, yeah. My brother's gone. 2 brothers are gone. So, you know, let me give you an idea of where I come from. I did a thing the other day, just to give you some, you know, because I'm going around the bush, but I want you to understand. I did a count the other day on how much prison time my family has done. That's fucked up. Excuse my language. But I did a count, it was over 100 years. It was over 100 years. That's a century behind. You understand what I'm saying? Because when people aren't taught which way to go, they fall short of the goal. Sometimes because they weren't shot. And then when you're excluded from going places where opportunities arise, you're in more and more of a small box. So there's only so much you can do. There's only so much you can do. So as a result of being in that box, there's not just me in that box or my brothers in that box, but all the people who they squeezed in that one little box are all on top of each other. So when you put a ants in a jar and you put all those ants in one jar, it's a project. You're looking at this project. It may be for school or whatever, but then look at it. It's a project. Now let me go someplace different with it. Look at the projects that we have in New York and Boston and LA and those projects like that. Those are the same project as the ants that people did. Now they said if you put all of these types of people in one little corner, what are they going to do? First and foremost, they're going to multiply like rabbits. Right? We keep feeding them in these little neighborhoods negativity. They'll all go to jail, so we'll keep building prisons. Because they make money. They make money. But it's a project. When you put all of those ants in that jar, what do they do after 30 days?
They die.
Huh?
They die.
They kill each other. So that's why you have the violence in the hoods, they call them. But, you know, it's controlled violence because they're controlling it. When I first got turned on to crack cocaine, not crack cocaine, it wasn't called crack cocaine then. It was called freebasing. It was a different way in which you made the product. It wasn't as horrendous as crack, but anyway. He wants to hear the story, so I'll give it to him. So anyway, one day, I guess it was circa 1980 and 1981, when the smokable cocaine surge had hit the country. What had happened was Richard Pryor, famous comedian, was smoking what they called freebase in California. And as a result of him not knowing what he was doing with one of the chemicals that is used to construct this thing, it's called ether. What he didn't know was the ether was flammable, and when he went to make the product, somebody lit a match in the room with the ether bottle open, and as a result, the whole room went up like a nuclear bomb. And that's why Richard Pryor, if you go and do your research and Google him, his final days, his skin is all burnt. It was from smoking freebase. But when I got turned on to this thing, it happened like this. My brother and I, at this point, had been selling a lot of product. So we had gotten our name in the city, and everybody knew we had what they wanted. And so one day I'm sitting in the house with my brother. We're packaging up this product, cocaine, I might add. And we're sitting there, my brother and I, at the table, and we're doing this thing. And then all of a sudden there was a knock at the door. Well, when I heard the door, I wasn't expecting anybody. So I grabbed a pistol, because this is what we did in order to safeguard ourselves. And I went to answer the door. After my brother told me to answer the door, because my brother was in charge at that time. I was second in command. So I go and get the door. But when I said, "Who is it?" a voice came across, and it said, "It's Lou." So I said, "Lou, who are you looking for?" He said, "I'm looking for B," which is my brother's nickname. 1 second. So my brother and I were packaging up the product, okay? And when the knock came to the door, I go down, and the dude said his name was Lou. So I look out the peephole, and what I saw out the peephole is I clutched my pistol in my hand. What I noticed out of the peephole was a brother that looked like he had just stepped out of a GQ magazine. He just stepped out of Lomo, okay? So, and his voice was just, it was different. So when I opened up the door and looked at this gentleman that was at the door, I love fashion, so when I looked at what he was wearing, I was instantly enamored. You know, little did I know, I probably wanted to be like him at that time because I was impressionable. But when I asked him his name again, he said, "Lou." I said, "Okay." I said, my brother's waiting for you? He says, yeah. So I said, okay. I said, what's your last name? I said, what's your whole name? So he said, my name is Lou Cipher. So I said, okay. So I go upstairs, and I brought him into the living room. My brother sat him down because they had already previously talked and they had set up this business. So what had happened was, this was the beginning of the end for me and my brother. Little did we know at that time that it was the beginning of the end. And it was the beginning of the end. So this gentleman, this Lou Cipher, he was dressed eloquently from head to toe. He was dressed like he had just stepped off of Newberry Street in Boston. If you know anything about Newberry Street in Boston, that's high-end fashion. And he had on a Giorgio Armani black silk suit with the matching Giorgio Armani shirt with a matching tie, black, all in black, like he was an undertaker. But little did we know that he was. And when he came and he shook my hand, his hands were soft as pillows. So I knew this brother had never done an honest day of work in his life. So I'm checking him out because, like I say, I'm into fashion. And like I said, he was a Giorgio Armani from head to toe. But when I looked at his wingtip Cole & Hans shoes, I knew that brother had it going on. So I brought him upstairs. He sat with my brother. They chatted for a while. And I sat there watching because I don't know this guy, so I don't trust him. So I'm just watching him. It's my job. So he says to my brother asked him, what did he want? So he said the amount that he wanted, and my brother gave it to him. Now, mind you, when this brother came in the house looking like he had just stepped off of a magazine, there was some odd about his appearance that I noticed, but I didn't say anything. That was quirky to me. And what was quirky about it was, with all of these beautiful clothes and jewelry that this brother had on, underneath his arm was a McDonald's bag. So I said to myself, did he eat at McDonald's? Lo and behold, when my brother gave him the package, he asked my brother, can he use some of it in the house? So my brother said, okay, because we thought he was just going to sniff it. We didn't know anything about smoking this product. So all of a sudden he came out of his bag, the McDonald's bag. I'm thinking he's bringing out a Big Mac or something. But he brought out a little vial with water in it. He brought out another vial that looked like water, but it had a word on there that said ether. And he brought out a little mirror, and he brought out all this little chemistry kit. We looked at him intently, not knowing what he was about to do, but we were curious. They have a saying, curiosity killed the cat. That night, the cat died a horrendous death. So when my brother gave him the package, he started wielding all these little instruments around, and it turned into a chemistry class. He took the vial that was clear, that was water, and he took all of the product that my brother gave him and put it in the vial. It disappeared. Now it's only water. So now we're looking like, what did he just do? Did he just ruin a lot of money? Is this going to be a problem? So we're ready to go hood and, gangster on him if need be. But the brother was so calm, cool, and collected that we didn't even give it a second thought. We just watched with curiosity. And as we watched, this brother started doing some things that we had never seen before. He took the powdered cocaine, put it in the vial, then he put this thing, ether, into the vial with it and started shaking it violently. Now, a lot of people don't know what ether is, but if you watch any movie or TV show, when you see the guy come behind a woman, they put the napkin over her mouth and she passes out, it's because the product ether is on the napkin. So this is what he put in the vial with the cocaine and the water, and he shook it violently. And we're looking at him like, what the hell is he doing? After he shook it, it separated like oil and vinegar, water and vinegar, right? It separated, it wouldn't conjoin. So what he did, he pulled out what was on the top and he splashed this liquid onto a mirror, the circular mirror that he had. And as a result, he blew on it and it turned back into what we had given him before. We were flabbergasted and didn't even know what the hell. How did he just turn powder into water back into powder? My brother and I, being of somewhat intellect, we were curious even more. The brother puts it in a pile, it's back to the original state, and then he pulls out what we had seen before. He pulled out a glass pipe, and he said, "Do you mind if I get high?" My brother says, "Go right ahead," and we're watching him, just watching him, and watching him. And when he hit that pipe and that smoke swirled around the belly of the pipe, it danced like he was a snake charmer, and it was the snake doing its little nasty dance. What we didn't know at the time was that this product that he introduced to us would get us addicted the first time we hit it. So he smokes it, we watch him, he puts it out, then he said the infamous words, "Would you like to try it?" My brother quickly obliged and took a hit of this pipe, and he hit it. Then he asked me if I wanted some, but he was my big brother. Whatever he did, I did. So I hit it with him. Didn't feel a thing. So we thought. Hit it again and again. Didn't feel anything. So we thought this guy had just spent his money fruitlessly. He asked for another package before he had to depart. And when my brother gave it to him, he kindly said goodbye. I walked him to the door. I led this good brother, so I thought, out, and I couldn't wait to get back upstairs to talk to my brother. I run up the stairs. I said, "What do you think about that shit? Did you feel that shit?" And he says, "No." He said, "Did you?" I said, "No." I said, "I don't know what that brother did with that stuff, man, but that wasn't nothing." And my brother said, "I know." And we stopped talking and we just stood there thinking for a minute. When we stopped to talk, it was 7 o'clock in the evening. All of a sudden, someone appeared in the kitchen. It was my brother's wife. She had just come up in the house. And she came in the kitchen and she said, "What the heck is wrong with you guys?" We snapped out of wherever we was in, and we both looked at the clock and it said 11 o'clock. 4 hours went by that we thought was 10 minutes. 10 minutes, 4 hours went by where we just looked at each other and didn't even know we were looking at each other. I said earlier that this was the beginning of the end. That night would split me and my brother up until this day. But I'm going to tell you now, the story is not to be glorified. The story is to be amplified in order for somebody not to have to go down the same road in which I went. And the thing about it is what was it? That experience devastated both of the brothers, myself and my brother. It devastated us. So after this dude left and we were sitting there talking, my brother said, "Yo, did you pay attention to what he did?" And I said, "Yeah, I paid attention to what he did." He said, "Come on, let's go get in the car." I said, "Where are we going?" He said, "We're going to the smoke shop. They sell all the shit he had." And we left the house and we went to the smoke shop and got the shit that man had. And we came home, and this is how fast addiction will overwhelm you. Mind you, we took our first hit at 7 o'clock. By 11:30, we were full-blown junkies and didn't know it. That's hard to believe in 4.5 hours, huh? Well, you never have to endure if you never pick up. So I implore anybody not to pick up. And going back to the story, you know, I told you when the man came in the house, I asked him his name, and he said Lou. Asked him his last name, and he said Cypher. Put the names together. Lucifer. Say it faster. Lucifer. Say it faster. Lucifer. Say it faster. Lucifer. So what I'm saying is that night, Lucifer came into our home and he destroyed it. And he destroyed it. And he destroyed life as we knew it because he put different principles and morals into us that weren't of our parents doing. And as a result, just fast tracking. And as a result, as time passed by, in the next 4 years, my brother was sentenced to 5 years on a 10 to 15 year prison sentence for drug kingpin crime. After that, after my brother went away, and I'm fast tracking this, we're gonna come back and talk the fillers to go in between this. And as a result, every time I drove my car after, we started selling this product this man had introduced us to and made a whole hell of a lot of money on it. But we lost our souls in the process. Well, we thought we lost our souls, but we had just lost our body and our minds because God always controls your soul. And to this day, there's still a problem, and as these videos go on, I will go deep into. I'm just giving you a little prelim of what's to come, because I got stories in abundance. I got 66 years of stories to tell. And God willing, I'll get a chance to express these on this video. However this is called, because I'm old, I don't know. They get terminology for stuff that I don't even know. And I feel like an imbecile because I don't know this stuff. But we'll get through it together. But, before I leave, here you go. I just told you about how my brother and I got into this thing called distribution and trafficking. But after all that, and I had got a clean head and became clean and sober in 1994. Getting high from 1972 until 1993. But there was a story. The devil, Shaitan, Lucifer, was in his lair trying to pick a predecessor for him, an heir to his throne. So he decided to call the three most heinous henchmen that he had under his tutelage, and he called A, B, and C, three henchmen, A, B, and C. When they all confronted him and stood in front of him, before him, he made him a proposition. He had a plan for them. He said, I'm making you a proposition. He said, each of you are very skilled at heinous trickery and deceit. He says, I want you each to go out and do something as hideous and whatever you need to do. He who wreaks the most havoc will acquire the throne. So he sent these three individuals out to do whatever it was they did. I don't know, you ever heard the story? Okay, so he sent everybody out to do what they were supposed to do. So it's A, B, and C. So henchman A goes out and he's wondering what he's gonna do to be so heinous that Lord Shaitan is gonna make him his heir. So he went out, and as he was contemplating on what he was doing, he passes by a bank. When he looks in the bank, he sees it as crowded beyond compare. There's wall-to-wall people making transactions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So he says, hey, I can run in here, take all the money and give him a big bag of millions of dollars and he'll love me for this. So he runs into the bank, alerts everybody it's a robbery. Everybody gets on the floor. He goes into the vault. He takes all the money. He's going home with the money. He's putting it in the car. Then he comes back into the bank and decides, I might as well kill everybody. So he killed everybody in the bank. There's a moral to the story. Pay attention. So he kills everybody in the bank. So he can't wait to get back to tell Shaitan, Satan, Lucifer that he killed all these people and give him this big gazillions of dollars. Man B is contemplating what he's gonna do to make a ruckus, to make a chaotic situation, to make him the heir apparent to the devil's throne. As he was thinking, he devised a plan that he would go and rent a couple of planes. He hired a few people to help him in his bidding, and he taught them, he had them learn how to fly a plane. And those planes each took off one day and took down the Twin Towers in New York and took out part of the Pentagon. Lots of people died in the Twin Towers bombing and all that stuff, and he was happy. He couldn't wait to get back and tell Shaitan what he had done. He was in glee. Man C, henchman C, he's walking down a beautiful street, like one of these streets here in Coral Gables, that this tree lined with beautiful trees with all these colors protruding and chartreuses and blues and reds and whatever. He's walking down and he doesn't know what to do. He's just walking down, and he was kind of nonchalant in his whole way of living anyway, so he didn't really care. So we thought. So he's walking down this tree-lined street, and he happened to look in this beautiful baby mansion window, this big Bayview window, and when he looked in, what he saw had him stuck. What he saw was a husband and wife cuddling on the couch watching watching TV. He saw London. He saw two kids, a boy and a girl, and they were playing with jacks, the old game that they played back in my day. They're playing with jacks and they're having a wonderful time and they're laughing and they're giddy, and everybody in the house is just giddy. The cat is jumping around, is playing with the dog, and everything is just beautiful in this house. So henchman C creeps in the back window, unbeknownst to the inhabitants of the house. And as he creeped through the window, he goes in the living room. Now they couldn't see him, and he whispered something in the husband's ear. And then just as easily and as visible as he came in, he departed and got back to the front of the house and looked in the window. When he looked in the window, he saw the husband slap the wife. They stopped fighting in the den. Looks at the kids, they're on the floor playing with the jacks. They start to fight, and they were fighting over the game or whatever. Then the dog and the cat are running around, and now there's chaos in the house. He walks down the street, he leaves. He doesn't think, whatever. Goes in. So the devil calls all the henchmen back to see what they had done. They stand before him. He asks henchman A, what is it that you did that you think you deserve the heir to my throne? He said, well, listen, I was walking down on 5th Street, saw the Bank of America, ran in there, killed up about 150 people, and got all this money for you. He throws this bushel of money at him. He says, wow, that's a good deed, man. Good job. He says, henchman B, what did you do? Well, he said, I rented a couple of planes, hired some guys, we bombed the Twin Towers and the Pentagon and everything, killed a bunch of people. He said, wow, that's even better than the first one. He said, get closer to me. Now, when they look over at henchman C, he's still nonchalant. He's looking out the window of hell, and he ain't thinking about nothing. They said, henchman C, what did you do? He said, I didn't do nothing, man. He said, I didn't know what to do, He said, I was walking down some beautiful street, man, looked in the window. He said, and I saw this beautiful family having a wonderful time. The husband and the wife were in sync with one another. The kids were right. The dogs and the animals were right. He said, and it was just right. He said, then I creeped in the back window and I whispered in the man's ear and told him some bad things that his wife has been doing. He said, then I left. He said, next thing you know, the husband's beating up the wife and the whole family's in chaos. He said, that's all I did. I know it's not much. He said, my son, I want you to come and stand closest to me because you are now the heir of this throne. And he said, why? When this guy killed 100 and some odd people, took all this money from the bank and gave you the money, and this guy killed all the people in the Twin Towers and the Pentagon and messed up the whole government system, and all I did was have a husband beat his wife and the kids were fighting. What did I do that was so special? He said, they killed people right now. He said, you, henchman C, you killed a generation. You understand? Huh? You understand? You killed a whole generation when you went in that house and destroyed that family. Now they're going to keep repeating that. Moral of the story is, sometimes when you open your door to outsiders, you allow the devil to creep in behind them. So safeguard your family. Because that man that came in on me and my brother, he destroyed a relationship that me and him had that I've never gotten back. I've never gotten it back. Never. Not till today. It's just never been the same. It's just never been the same.